What is going on, everybody? My name's Chris. Welcome to Bourbinsane. We're here today and we are going to be reviewing the full lineup of Sagamore spirits. Now, one of my patrons, Christopher David, was so kind. He sent me every single one of their expressions, sample bottles. He sent me a full bottle of their base expression, the Sagamore, and then they have 6 additional finished expressions, things like that. We'll get into that, but couldn't be more grateful. Thank you so much for sending these to me, and I can't wait to review these. So let's talk about Sagamore a little bit. Sagamore is actually located in Baltimore, Maryland, and what they do is, at the moment, they're currently sourcing from MGP. So on the back of all their bottles, it does say, aged in new charred oak barrels, distilled in Indiana, bottled by Sagamore. So, that tells us it is MGP juice, but they are starting to age their own product, but in the meantime, they're sourcing from MGP. So, not a big deal as long as it's good, which we'll find out, but... So from MGP, the rye whiskey that they source, there's actually used blends of different mash bills. So they use the 95.5, they use a 51% rye, 45% corn, and 4% barley. And then they also use a 51% rye and 49% barley. So they kind of blend all the barrels together based on the flavor profile they want. So 3 different recipes or mash bills they use go into these Sagamore bottles. They are all rye whiskeys. The difference between all their expressions is going to be how they finish it. So they have many different finishing techniques they use for their whiskeys. And like I said, we'll get into that when we dive into these. So I've got 7 samples lined up here. I'm going to be doing this in a couple chunks, so I'm probably not going to do all this in one day. I don't want my palate to be overwhelmed, but I'll come back and piece it all together for you guys. I got my water here, so I'll be drinking in between too. So let's get into the first expression here. This is the normal Sagamore Rye Whiskey, which we have right here. And this is 41.5%. So the way I arrange these, I set them up so that we're going to work our way up in proof. So this one's 41.5. Now, they call this a Maryland Rye. And the real reason they call it a Maryland Rye is just because they have, kind of like Kentucky, natural limestone filtered water. And that's what they add to the spirit to proof it down. Things like that, and it supposedly makes it into a Maryland Rye. So, smells like a classic rye whiskey on the nose. It's quite mellow. I mean, you get a lot of orange peel, like candied oranges. Definitely baking spices, like a nutmeg, clove in here. Heavy citrus though. Heavy citrus peel on the nose for sure. So, cheers, guys. Good flavor. It drinks really easy, really smooth, which I expected. Only 41.5%. So, good flavor though. I mean, you get the candy oranges coming through. The baking spices are definitely prevalent on the palate. All these expressions are going to be 4-year MGP, so they're all 4-year-old. Solid though. Not too bad. It's a very easy drinking rye. Price is going to be a little more expensive in general. Probably around $40 to $50 for the base Sagamore. So, but it is a solid expression. If you like rye, it's a classic rye whiskey. I mean, if you like MGP rye, it's excellent for you. So, all right, moving on to the second expression from Sagamore. This is the Sagamore Rye Double Barrel. Now, this is just what it sounds like. They age it for 4 years, then they put it into a new, unused charred oak barrel for an additional amount of time. They don't disclose how long that is. They just say they re-age it in another charred oak barrel. So, comes in at 48.3%. So, a lot of distilleries do these double oaked expressions now. Old Forester has the 1910, which is a double oak. Woodford Reserve has a double oaked product. So, a pretty common thing in the whiskey world, starting to become more popular. So, we'll see what different flavors it imparts. Definitely seem to get more barrel char on this. You definitely still get the heavy baking spices. The candied fruit note is definitely still there on the nose. Nice toasted oak though. Toasted, burnt caramel. And burnt caramel's a note I'll pick up often on, more heavily charred barrels or a double barrel like this. Definitely almost like a nutty note in here as well, maybe like an almond or walnut, something like that. I think that goes along with the toast, the extra toast in the barrels. So let's give it a taste. Cheers, guys. I'm a fan of that. So I quite like that, actually. A nice mouthfeel. The little bit amplified and proof, almost up to 50%, really helps. It gives you a nice, like, candy, like a Werther's caramel candy all over your palate. You get the oak on the back end. It doesn't dry out, though, like some whiskeys can. They leave a very drying on the back of the palate. It's not doing that, fortunately. It's just leaving a nice savory flavor in the mouth. It's definitely almost like a toasted chocolate note. A lot of rye as well, I can get chocolate notes, and I think that comes out more in this double barrel. I really like the flavors I'm getting on the palate on this. The oak, the chocolate, the candied fruit, the baking spices. Very nice. This is already going to be, I think, one of my favorite expressions from them. Price on this bottle is between $60 and $65, so again, a pricey bottle, but for that, an initial impression from me, I think that's a very, very good expression. All right, moving on to the third expression from Sagamore. This is the Sagamore Rye Vintner's finish. Now, what is a vintner? Vintner is pretty much the equivalent of what a distiller is for whiskey, except for wine. So they are the people who are involved in the whole process of the winemaking, and that's where the name comes from. So what Sagamore does is after they get the juice from MGP, they actually finish it in 3 different types of wine barrels. So they finish it in port barrels, Shiraz barrels, and Pinot Noir barrels. And then after they individually finish them, they go ahead and blend all those barrels together to get the flavor profile they want. So 3 different types of wine. It'll be very interesting to see the flavors that come through on this one, because I feel like it's going to be very unique. Immediately on the nose, it smells like a finished whiskey. I will say that. This does come in at 49.2% as well. So a little bit higher in proof. Definitely more citrus to me. More fruitiness, if you will. Like I'd say maybe cherry, or even some of the lighter fruits too. Like an apple. Baking spices are still there. Even maybe a cinnamon note comes through on this. Yeah, it definitely smells... I think the cherry's popping through more. It's more of a fresh cherry, not so much that deep bourbon, bourbon barrel cherry. It's more the fresh, brighter cherry, but definitely smells like a finished product, but not a bad nose. Cheers. Cherry and cinnamon definitely come through on the palate, for sure. Those are the 2 most predominant notes. It still tastes, honestly, to me like the base Sagamore, but it tastes like it's got that finishing to give it that a little bit more fruitiness. Those same baking spices that I was describing even in the first base Sagamore expression is there, but... most definitely cinnamon cherry. If you like the cinnamon cherry flavor profiles in whiskey, you like those subtle notes, this is going to be a great option for you. I don't know if this is distributed all by them. This may be a distillery-only release. I couldn't find information on this. It's probably going to be pretty pricey, though, just given the process they have to go through to individually finish and then blend the barrels following that. So I'm guessing probably around $70-ish. If anyone has any information on that, go ahead and drop a comment and let me know. All right, moving on through the lineup here. Our next expression is Sagamore Rye 10-year. Now, it's just what it sounds like. 10-year-old Sagamore Rye. Still from MGP, it's just their 10-year-old expression. So, all the information is the same as far as I know, so let's just get right into it. Yes, it's definitely more oak forward, I would say. Sometimes the oak is that subtle on the back end, or even on the back end of the nose. You can smell the oak, but this is kind of just hits you right in the face with oak. Smells nice. I mean, nice baking spices still come through. You get the cinnamon, the clove, nutmeg is on this. So on the palate, that 10-year-old rye, it turned into more of a baked apple pie for me on that sip. You get the cinnamon, got your baked apples, the creaminess, the mouthfeel on this. The 50% is very nice. And you're getting just enough oak. It's not punching in the face like it really did on the nose. It's more subtle, which is great. Great for me. Very well balanced. This 10-year I think is very well balanced. It's not too much oak. It's not too much just sweetness that just overwhelms your palate. A nice mouthfeel, medium finish on it. 10 years is a good expression too. Again, I couldn't find any information about price on this as well, or if they distribute this. I have not seen this one myself, so I'm guessing again it's probably distillery only or limited release from them, and it's probably going to cost you a good amount. But another really good expression from them. I mean, if you like MGP rye, which a lot of us do, I know I do. I'm a big fan of MGP rye, especially higher proof. 10 years, it's a great expression. All right, moving on to the next expression. This is the Sagamore Rye Port Finished Rye. Now this comes in at 50.5%, and this actually recently just won the 2019 San Francisco Spirits Award for Best World Rye Whiskey. So pretty impressive. I like the proof. A lot of finished stuff can be lowered in proof, to 40, 45. This is 50.5%, so respectable proof for sure. So it's just what it sounds like. Again, they age it for 4 years, then they go ahead and finish that whiskey in port barrels, so European and American port barrels. And then once it's reached its maturity, again, they don't say how long they age it. They pull it and bottle it. So let's go right into this. Port influence is immediately on the nose. You get that rich, fruity note. I mean, plums, dates. Again, the candied orange, candied pears. Baking spices are there, but not as much as some of the previous expressions we tried. Caramel. Almost seems like a little bit of a salt or brine note is in this to me. I don't know if anyone's ever described that on this before, but maybe like a salted caramel. A little bit of a salted caramel on this. Let's give it a sip. Cheers. Immediately on the palate, yep, it tastes like a port. So all those juicy fruits. I mean, we're talking dark fruits, again, the plums, definitely plums, dates, those types of fruits, raisins, it's all there, and you get the drying oak from the wine, from the port. That's definitely on the back of the palate, is that drying note. And personally, I'm not as big of a fan of port finished whiskeys, just because I do get that drying note a lot, and that's not something I personally enjoy. A lot of people love that, especially people who like port wine and that flavor profile anyway. So, I mean, as far as finished whiskeys go, it's a good, solid expression for sure. Yeah, it's not bad at all. It's what you'd expect a port finish would taste like. I mean, if you've had Angel's Envy, and Angel's Envy is a port finished whiskey as well. Just got my bottle right here. Now this in general is aged about 6 to 7 years, and they finish it in port wine barrels. You can get that kind of drying oak feeling with the Angel's Envy, and that's what comes through on this expression as well. So it's a good port finish. You just have to like that flavor profile. You have to know what to expect when you're going to be drinking it. All right, moving on to the next expression from Sagamore. This is the Moscatel Finish, and this is up to even more in proof. This is 50.6%. Now, Moscatel is a type of wine. I honestly do not know anything about the flavor profile with Moscatel, so I really don't know what to expect from this. We'll find out when we go into it. But same process as what they use with the port and with the Vintners. It's aged for 4 years. They go ahead and finish it in those Moscatel barrels and pull it when they feel it's ready and blend the batches together. So let's go right into the nose. Immediately, I'd say it hits me with more of a spice kick than I was expecting. Almost peppery. I don't think I described pepper. I'll describe that a lot in rye whiskeys, but for the first expressions that I've done so far, I don't think I described that at all. And I'm getting that on this now. Still got the fruitiness in it. I'd say it leans more towards the darker fruits, the more, again, the plums, raisins, those types of fruits versus bright citrus fruits. But the spice is there for sure. Not as much of a baking spice, but it's more pepper. I mean, I guess I'm getting some orange peel as well. Orange peel, but not the bright orange fresh fruit you'd anticipate. It smells nice. Let's give it a sip here. Cheers. So definitely a lot more spice than the port finish had. It leaves on initial palate, it still hits the back of my palate with a little bit of a drying note. But now that the finish is kind of set in, it's not drying me out anymore. It still is leaving a nice palate and inviting me to want more, making me salivate a little bit. Not really drying me out like the port did personally. So this whiskey kind of takes my palate on a journey. Nice sweetness up front. I get a lot of spice in the middle of the palate. Again, the pepper, cinnamon in the middle of the palate. And then on initial sip, back of the palate gives me that drying oak like a finished whiskey does. A wine finished whiskey sometimes can do. But after I wait about 10 seconds, that drying note on the back of the palate goes away, which it usually won't for me with some rye whiskey, some finished whiskeys. But it goes away now. Like I said, it's making me actually salivate, making me want more of this. Very interesting. I really like the flavor profile. If you're not a fan of finished whiskeys, like port finished whiskeys, this is different. I prefer more of the spice, with the baking spices or even rye spice now that my palate's more acquired to that. And this gives me more of that. I do get still some of the drying, but it tends to dissipate pretty quickly, which I think is really awesome. All right, we're on to the final expression from Sagamore. This is one I've been looking forward to. This is the Cask Strength Rye Whiskey. A lot of you know I'm a massive Cask Strength fan. Tends to give me a lot more bold flavors and everything that comes from the whiskey for me personally, and for a lot of people. And I'm looking forward to getting into this one. So this comes in at 52.6%. This is the same as the base Sagamore, so 4-year Sagamore Rye. It's just barreled at cask strength. Now, what Sagamore says is they do add a splash of that natural Maryland spring water. So there's probably some water added in there, but pretty much staying near that barrel proof. I actually bought a bottle of this so I could do my cask strength rye flight. And my bottle is 56.1%. The sample that Chris sent me is actually 52.6. So there can be differences in the strength of the cask strength expression. So much more bold, rich rye spice immediately on the nose on this. A lot more, lemongrass, citrus peel. We're talking lemon, orange peel. The rind of the citrus for sure. Cinnamon. All the baking spices again, the nutmeg, the clove, pepper. I feel like this expression kind of encompasses all the expressions we talked about. Again, being cask strength, I think that just amplifies the notes you can get on the nose and the palate. Smells nice though. I'm getting a little bit of an alcohol burn, like a youthful alcohol burn on this. which, you know, is definitely a put off for me, but we'll see how it goes on the palate. I wasn't getting that as much in my higher proof bottle, so we'll see. We'll see here. Pretty much everything I just described on the nose does translate to the palate. Finish is still going. I'm not getting the Kentucky hug down, the Maryland hug, if you will. This expression here is actually only 53%. So for someone who, you know, has drank 60% and higher, pushing 70% for some stuff, maybe that's why I'm not getting it as much. But it leaves a nice mouth coating. The finish is gone now, so about a medium finish on this. But pretty much everything that was on the nose translated to the palate. All those rye notes with the cinnamon, the clove, the pepperiness. Not as much of the drying barrel note on the back. I think that has more to do with the finished whiskey. For me personally, I get that drying note a lot more. So it didn't come through on this. One of my favorite expressions from them. The alcohol burn I was describing on the nose isn't really translating to the palate, fortunately. So everything you'd want in a good rye whiskey, it's here. Rye tends to be one of those things that can hide age very well, and 4 years for a rye whiskey isn't really that bad. I don't think. I've had a lot of 4-year ryes that are good, especially MGP makes a good rye. You know, they really do. And I think Sagamore is blending very well, and they're doing well with the blending part of it. I'll be curious to see what their expressions taste like when it's all their own distillate, which supposedly is going to be coming pretty soon, so I'm looking forward to that. This cask strength expression is $79.99. That's how much I got my bottle for. This also did win double gold at the San Francisco Spirits Award back in 2017. So they're already winning, you know, good accolades for their blending. Price is going to be the issue with any of these. I mean, being a craft distillery, price can always be a problem. There's so many options out there for not only rye whiskey, but bourbon, scotch, everywhere, and the market's tough. So what Sagamore is doing, at least with the blending side of things and the types of expressions they have and the finishes they're using, I really like it. I really do. There isn't a bad one in the bunch here, which is saying something. For 4-year whiskey, sometimes you can get some pretty rough stuff depending on who's making it and how they're handling the product. So I think overall Sagamore's doing a great job. I can't get many of these expressions. I can get these two here in Michigan. I have not seen any of the other ones. As far as distribution goes, they are starting to distribute throughout the country, but probably local to, you know, Maryland area is going to be where you'll have the best odds of getting their other expressions. I think they're worth a look at, though. Especially if you're a rye whiskey fan, Sagamore is definitely worth looking into. My personal favorite out of this whole lineup was probably the double barrel, honestly. Some of, you know, what the Moscatel Finish was really good too, and Cask Strength was really good too. So, I mean, there were multiple expressions that were great, but the double barrel gave me that more of a bourbon drinker's profile. You know, it's got that second barrel, more the bourbon, the char notes that I like. Overall, though, I think Sagamore's doing a great job. If you haven't had any of their expressions, I would recommend you at least go try them and see what you think for yourself. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. If you're a fan of whiskey, they're doing a good job, and they're worth a look at. Thank you all so much for watching this review today. If you like these types of videos, these distillery review videos, let me know. Leave a comment down below. Hit that like and subscribe button. Let me know what other distilleries expressions you'd like to see. I can try to see if I can get full lineups and do these types of videos. It's really cool to try a whole distillery's line so I can see kind of the full picture of what they're doing and, you know, what their outlook is on the whiskey world. So I appreciate you all watching today, though. Thank you so much for your support. Stay insane, everyone.